What if I told you the reason you can't lose fat has nothing to do with how much you're eating and everything to do with what you're eating? Specific wheat. I know, it's a big shocker. The healthy whole grain food we were told to make the base of our diet, right? That little slice of health might be the reason you feel bloated though. Or maybe you feel inflamed and stuck on the same cycle. You just can't lose that weight you've been working so hard for. Hey y'all, welcome back to Doozy Talks with Susie, where we keep it real about fitness, nutrition, mindset, and how to live in sync with your body and your purpose. Today we're talking about the food that's quietly sabotaging your fat loss goals and why giving it up could change everything from your digestion to your hormones to your energy levels. We grew up believing wheat was a superfood. Heart healthy, full of fiber. That's what you see on all of the ads. Eat your whole grain bread. But modern wheat is not the wheat your grandparents ate. Literally, you can do a whole research study on it. I've been doing studies on it, and it's absolutely mind blowing. Because here's the thing my dad ended up with celiac disease in his 40s. My sister has a wheat allergy. I have a wheat intolerance. Where does all of this come from? And 100 years ago, 200 years ago, this wasn't even a thing. What happened? Well, back then, the wheat was different. It was a tall, simple plant called einkorn. Today's version is this high-yield, genetically hybridized dwarf wheat that's been bred for softness, stretch, and profit. It's not necessarily there to make us healthier. They just need to make money because the demand became higher, so they started figuring out how can we make more at a faster rate so that we can meet the demands. And that's what they started doing, but it had its repercussions that maybe were not calculated into their original plan. So the result, wheat that has 40 times more gluten than it used to, and a protein structure your body literally doesn't recognize. I think that is the craziest thing. I had no idea. Side story really quick. So growing up, I was taught how to make my own whole wheat bread. We would grind our own wheat and we would make it. But sometimes, for some reason, the wheat didn't form good gluten. I don't know if the wheat grinder would get too warm and it would destroy the gluten. We were never really sure. We kind of experimented. But imagine what would be happening if the wheat we were using actually still had that 40 times amount of gluten than what the older ones used to have, the ones from 100 years ago. If it had that, and because it wasn't forming that good stretchiness that we wanted, we were adding gluten to the wheat. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I have no idea what we were actually doing to ourselves. But here's the issue, because your gut sees the modern wheat and goes, what is this? Because it's not what our bodies are naturally designed to process. So then when all your little gut buddies start seeing that, then they start sending emergency signals throughout your body. And then this starts triggering inflammation and water retention. And for some people, full-blown immune responses. So when I say full-blown immune responses, that could be a wheat allergy, or it could be celiac disease, because celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder, and it gets triggered when you eat wheat. So then you have an inflamed gut. Your metabolism begins to slow down because now it's trying to keep you alive. Something's going on. Your body thinks it's under attack. And so now your gut is inflamed and the metabolism begins to slow down. And I think this is important. And we're going to go a little more into detail about what the wheat does inside of our bodies, because when I started taking a trip through how does wheat work through our body, it was incredible what I started learning. So here's what happens. When you eat the wheat, it raises your blood sugar faster than table sugar. So that sugar you throw in your coffee in the morning has less of an impact on your blood sugar than if you were to eat a piece of bread. That's crazy. That spike in your blood sugar sends a message to your pancreas to release insulin, which is the fat storage hormone. And insulin helps reduce your blood sugar levels in your bloodstream. So every time that insulin surges, your body begins to store more fat and it burns less fat. So if you've got even mild insulin resistance, your cells are already tired of hearing insulin's message. So now the spikes are hitting harder. And so the result, stubborn belly fat, midday crashes, and crazy cravings. And one other thing, and I'll probably mention it again later, you might notice a strange surge of emotions too when you're eating wheat. If you're eating it once every day or two, because if it's every day, you may not notice that change in how you're feeling. But if it's once every day or two, you might notice, oh, I kind of feel funny. Or if it's once a week, you'll start noticing it. So then there's gluten, which opens the tight junctions of your gut lining. So this is a major problem because your gut lining is supposed to be tight and formed together so that none of the bad stuff leaks through, because your body needs to finish processing the food. It needs to go through all the other processes. So what happens though, if the gluten starts opening up your gut, you start developing something called leaky gut. That's what most people know it as. And that means, this is really gross when I started discovering this, but that means food particles as well as toxins and bacterial fragments start leaking into your bloodstream. So now your body's going to be like, wait, what? Your immune system starts to panic because there are a bunch of foreign objects in your bloodstream and they need to clean it up. So now inflammation skyrockets as your immune system is trying to clear out all of this craziness that's going through your bloodstream, and your metabolism hits the brakes hard. Your body can't focus on burning the extra fat. It can't focus on being healthier. It can't even focus on resting because you have all of these toxins, bacterial stuff, the food that wasn't digested yet flowing through your bloodstream. And your body has to clean that out before you end up really sick. And so, honestly, that puffy feeling after bread or pasta, that's not bloating from the calories. It's very likely your body retaining water to protect inflamed tissues. And so keep an eye on that. Something to really think about, because I noticed when I started cutting wheat from my diet, it started getting way less, bloating went down. I feel so much better. But that's not all that wheat does, because there's more. We now have the brain and hormone connection. And for me, this was super cool because because I grew up, we ate wheat product at least once a day, every day, my entire growing up life that I can recall. I don't know of a day we did not eat wheat, whether it was bread, pasta, crackers, pancakes, biscuits. And the thing, we tell ourselves this is healthy and we make it at home ourselves. We buy our own flour, but that doesn't mean it's coming from the right type of wheat. And there was a whole study done on this, and you can look it up as well. When you go to Italy, for instance, their wheat is the good wheat. So you may notice that you can eat their bread, you can eat their pasta, because in Italy, they're using the natural stuff, the real stuff. They're not over here bioengineering everything to make it more productive. And that's really important, people. So don't be afraid to go to another country and try their pasta. Just try a bite, see how you feel. But I've heard, haven't experienced yet, maybe someday, that pasta and bread in Italy have a totally different effect on the gut, the digestion, immune system, all of that. So now let's talk about the brain and the hormone connection, because this is very important, and I think a lot of us have no idea what's going on. And so wheat doesn't just affect your gut. It affects the brain as well. So here's what happens. When gluten breaks down, it forms compounds called gliadorphins, which are little opioid-like molecules that bind to the same receptors as morphine. You heard that right. And that's why people say they're addicted to bread, because it's not a joke. It's biochemistry. We really do. And people are like, I just want another piece of bread. I just need a little more. And you find yourself eating it without even realizing you're eating it. These compounds will trigger pleasure signals and then crash. which explains the post-pasta brain fog and irritability. And for women, those insulin spikes can also disrupt estrogen and progesterone balance, making PMS worse, slowing thyroid output, and tanking energy. Ladies, please hear me out. Because then we've got Brenda over here who swears her whole wheat avocado toast keeps her full all morning. Meanwhile, she's yawning at 10 a.m. and Googling, why am I so tired? Girl, it's the toast. And you need to pay attention to it. Now, the next one gets a little sciencey, but it's another aspect that you need to pay attention to, and that's the DNA. So, if you've got certain methylation and detox gene variants, like in your MTHFR, COMT, or SOD genes, you can look it up if you do a DNA test. You can look those up and see what they say about you. Many of us have these gene variants. So if you're already noticing the symptoms, maybe you can skip the DNA part. But if you want to be certain, go check that out, get your DNA tested. It's very valuable because then you can know if maybe you need to add in some supplements to your daily routine. So if you have these variants, your body's already working harder to clear inflammation and oxidative stress. So every time wheat triggers that immune reaction, your recovery takes a little longer and your metabolism becomes even more sluggish, your skin flares, your mood dips, and this is why two people can eat the same sandwich. One feels fine, and the other one feels like a deflated balloon by 2 p.m. It's not willpower, it's biochemistry. All right, so I'm telling you all these problems, all these issues. What do we do about it? Well, I've had to find a lot of other ways to enjoy food. And so here's what I eat instead. All right. So here's what I would recommend. And I think it's helpful because when I started swapping these things out, I didn't really feel deprived, maybe a little bit at the beginning. Because I'm like, oh, everybody else is getting to eat the pasta. Everybody else is eating the wheat. Nobody else is checking the food label at the grocery store. It's only me, and I can't have half of this processed food. All right. You can still enjoy food though. So for baking, personally, I use oat flour and almond flour, which I know people are like, oh, those things are not really good for you either. It's better than wheat. But if you'd rather stay away from those, there's also cassava flour, tapioca flour, coconut flour. They're gluten-free and rich in resistant starch, which feeds good gut bacteria instead of inflammation. And you can also, if you want the texture, you could try white rice or sweet potatoes as your base carbs because they're easier to digest and don't typically trigger the same immune reaction as wheat unless you have other food reactions. Then you could also have the same immune reaction, but it tends to be significantly less, if anything. And then for wraps and for bread, honestly, there's gluten-free bread everywhere. You can buy gluten-free bread. And there's egg-based crepes, there's coconut wraps. You could use zucchini. I just kind of tend to forgo bread for the most part. But if you absolutely need it and you're really trying to stay away, those are some ideas. Also, there's sweet potato rounds, so you can cut your sweet potato into circles and cook it. I don't know how I feel about that option, though. For snacks, beef jerky, but watch the ingredients because beef jerky could potentially have gluten ingredients, wheat ingredients in it. There's roasted chickpeas. If you have an intolerance to certain carbs, pay attention to that. Rice cake, homemade protein bites. Protein if it's protein powder, and then some kind of gluten-free flour. Just remember that when you're doing this, because it can be overwhelming, every swap that you're making, that lowers inflammation, which raises your metabolism. You're not going to give up comfort. You're just upgrading it. It's kind of like when I started deciding, hey, I need to be drinking less caffeinated coffee, but I didn't want to completely give up coffee. So I switched over to decaf coffee. So then I can have less caffeine in my system. And I'm feeling better, but without the crazy, wired, tired feeling to go with it. All right. So if your body's been holding on to fat, no matter what you do, look at wheat. Modern wheat isn't nourishment. It's a biochemical stressor dressed up as a health food. So removing it might just be the missing link between trying and thriving. Drop a wheat emoji in the comments if you're cutting wheat this week. And let me know if you want me to do a follow-up on how to heal your gut after wheat. They told us wheat was the foundation of a healthy diet, but maybe it's been the foundation of our inflammation all along. I'll see you guys in the next video.